As strength coaches, it's hard to bridge the gap between science and practice. Fortunately, Dr. Lon Kilgore, author of Anatomy Without a Scalpel, Deconstructing Yoga, and many other books on the subject of strength and conditioning, is here to help us do just that. Welcome to the Strength Coach Collective, a podcast brought to you by Two Brain Business. We are here to help advance the strength and conditioning coaching community by bringing you a wide range of experts in the field. Join our group at strengthcoachcollective.com. I'm excited to talk to you, man. I read your book. I think we talked about this yesterday as we did some technological checks, but I read your book like 13 years ago. So this is really neat for me.
Yeah.
To be able to connect with you.
Yeah, it's been a while since I wrote. That was Anatomy Without a Scalpel. So that was the first edition. That was right after I had a brain tumor and had it out. It's about the size of half your fist. Came out of my skull. Jeez. So make sure that all the things were working. I decided that I needed to write the book. I had already made that almost everything in that book available to my students at the university because, anatomy books are what, $300? I just put it online for free for them.
Yeah.
Then I decided, well, let's get it out to the rest of the world. And I think I charged like $25 for a book I illustrated and wrote, and it's written in the layman's terms, so coaches and athletes would actually understand it. Because most academics tend to speak in academic speak, lots of academic jargon, lots of scientific jargon, and that gets lost in translation out to the public. So I wanted to make sure that everybody that read it could actually understand it. So I tried to talk like, or write like I talk.
Yeah, I believe you were successful in that. I was a non-traditional background for exercise. I came into this late, decided I wanted to be a coach. And so I didn't have the anatomical background that I needed. And your book was what solved that problem for me. So I think you accomplished it for me, if that's worth anything.
That is it's worth it for me. Because knowing that people actually get use out of it, and I didn't just write it as a vanity project, that's actually fun. The second edition is actually better.
Yeah, you mentioned that yesterday. I'm excited to pick that up. But let's talk about the purpose of that. So it was anatomy in a way that was very easy to digest, but also functional for the fitness professional to understand levers and to understand limb lengths and et cetera, et cetera. Can you elaborate on what I'm remembering from that?
Well, the part of the first section is it's called anthropometry, and it's basically the variation in human conformation, limb lengths, trunk lengths, leg lengths. So exercise technique, especially with barbells, is dramatically affected by individual variations in arm length, leg length, femur length, tibial length, trunk length through the axial skeleton. There's lots of little factors that make things look different. You can be in an absolutely perfect pulling position for you, and since I'm built differently than you, if I try to assume the exact same position that you do in terms of angles of the back to the floor, the knee angles, hip angles, I'm going to be out of position, and I'm going to be inefficient. So the idea was to describe the human conformation in a way that a coach can rapidly see, okay, he's got long arms, so he's going to need to set up in this way. He's going to need a wider grip to get his snatch into the jump position. Or in the deadlift, you're going to have to change your hip height, and pull hip height. And so there's a whole lot of little things I've discovered through my own experience over the past 50 some years that I tried to pass on. Most people would call them sort of hacks, life hacks, coaching hacks. No,
they're cool. Yeah,
they're not hacks. They're just the way people are built differently, and that's how you coaches should adjust to scale technique, if you want to call it scaling technique, adjust technique, modify technique, whatever it is. The start position is critical in any exercise, because if you're in the wrong start position, you're not going to produce the best amount of force, the best amount of velocity, or actually the best amount of endurance, because you're going to fatigue really quickly if your technique's not on point.
Yeah. Totally. And I think again for the stage of my life that I was in when I read that book, it was so illustrative, both literally and figuratively, because I had such a cursory overview of fitness and, like you said, start positions, to then understand, okay, well, I can't assume because this is what I learned, or what I pulled out from what I learned, that I can then make that a universality to every single person that walks in. I gotta paint with a couple different brushes here to make this efficient for everybody. And I think it just opened the door to that recognition of how individual this is, regardless of how basic it could seem on the front end.
See, before 2000, before 2000, I was basically doing modification of start position and coaching, technique to weightlifters and athletes by just my intuition and gained experience. I actually hadn't at that time I'd only been a professor for about 5 years, and so I hadn't actually taken the time to actually take that experiential knowledge and that intuition and frame it up into a way that I could present that better logically to someone else and have them adopt the same type of coaching banter or coaching instructions, or how they actually use that information. And this is one of the cool things of, life puts you in the right place at the right time most often. And I got a job in Wichita Falls, moved from Kansas State University down to Midwestern State University, and that's where I met Rippetoe. And
Okay.
we got together and we started codifying his intuition, his experiential knowledge. He was in powerlifting, I was in weightlifting and athletics. And so when we got together and we started discussing things, that's when we started really, as a pair, sort of gelling into how we think about exercise, fitness, and things like that. I had always known since I started in the exercise arena, even as just an athlete, that there's a massive number of coaches and academics out there that have absolutely no idea how to actually exercise. So when you have people who have no idea of how to exercise, researching it, trying to explain it, then you get lots of useless and potentially damaging information out there. I mean, here's one of the best examples, because I did an article about this and a cartoon. I haven't seen the most current edition of the NSCA Essentials, but in the roughly the 2010s version, inside that, when they're talking about doing a power clean, they see that you need to hyperextend your cervical vertebra at the top of the pull.
Perfect.
What's the definition of hyperextension? Extending a joint beyond its normal range of motion, and the outcomes of that, specifically cervically, is damage to the cervical spines, the intervertebral discs, headaches, nausea, vomiting. So all those things, they're saying you need to do this on every power clean. No, you need to extend the vertebrae. Extend, not hyperextend. And the other example of that terminology is when people use when they do hyperextensions, back extensions on a glute ham machine. They used to call that hyperextensions. And so the physicians, that's one of the reasons that exercise got such a bad rap. It's because they're using anatomical terms, scientific terms, medical terms, inappropriately, giving everybody in the world a chance to say, these guys are idiots. We need to control them. We need to certify them. We need to regulate them. So we, as fitness professionals, coaching professionals, open the door for criticism because we didn't take the time to learn the terminology and be able to explain things in a way that people understand. It really annoys me when I have coaches use um, jargon and terms that they know that the individual will not understand. They're doing it so they
Right.
can sound smart. No,
100%.
don't sound smart. Sound good. Get them to do what you need to do.
Yeah. So I said this on a recent one of these episodes, but like I've stolen so much more from the kids class than I would love to admit because it's easier. People understand it. You know, if I say sound like an angry gorilla, like they got it. But
Yeah,
if I overcomplicate it, then yeah, it's an ego stroking because I get to say, hey, I know all these cool words and you don't know. That's why I'm up here. But it doesn't actually achieve what I'm wanting to them to achieve.
yeah, and it goes down to really simplistic things like when you arch your back, you arch it. But a lot of
Yeah.
people don't understand arch back. They think this is a round is an arch. Kyle Pierce, one of the best coaches in the U.S. and a really good friend of mine, way back we ran a seminar at Midwestern State University for juniors, and he got them to understand arching by say bow up to them. You got to bow up, you know, and so that got people to understand that when you bow up, you puff your chest out and you're going after somebody,
Totally.
and
Yep.
they understood that, and so
Yep.
we didn't use arch. We said bow up, and it
Yeah.
worked. They got better,
Yeah. Yeah. And it
and
probably stuck. I'm sure that that's stuck. And I'm sure that that's extrapolated out for anybody that's, made that reference to somebody else. Like they tell the story, it sticks. It's like any sort of knowledge acquisition. You can make it sticky.
yeah,
It's gonna be in there.
yeah. And one of the Rippetoe actually has just a plethora of clever statements. He's very
Yes.
gregarious, very
Yes.
outgoing,
Yes. Yep.
and absolutely zero afraid of stating his opinion, whether it's good or bad or controversial or widely accepted. But he goes, when we were trying to describe the structure and function of a cue, he said a cue is a short selection of words that you say to the trainee, so when he hears them, he does the thing that you want them to do.
Yeah.
And so bow up was that cue because
Yeah.
arch didn't work. So step back. There you go. Use a different cue. Every coach needs to have at least a half a dozen cues to describe the same thing. So if this one doesn't work, that one will. Or if that one and that one don't work, you just move down the list until you hit the right one. And everybody's a little bit different. One of my
Yeah, and that's what makes it fun. I think that's where the creativity. I tend to look at this like a chef in the kitchen. We've all got our own flavors and ways of doing things that can work for us. But like you said, I think that if you got to get a whiteboard out and draw some sort of diagram, like you're going that's way extreme. But if you got a one syllable prompt that is a cue that can get someone to do something in the moment, which is what we're trying to achieve, like sports performance, quick reaction, things happening,
yeah
in the nick of time or whatever. Like that
yeah
cue is a very important thing.
the the only time I would draw on a board would have been before we actually start the
Sure.
workout. Like I would, if I was going to focus on teaching a deadlift or a clean, and I wanted to have a good flat back or an arch back, I'd draw that up on the board before we even started. And then if there was a problem, then I would point that out, use that as a aid, and then I would model it myself and then model them. So in a 2 minute period in between sets, you could get the correction across. Excuse me for a
How
second.
much
I
do you
got to.
think people retain, like in the retention of those kinds of things? Like, how many cues do you feel like people can retain in a short period of time? In other words, like, yeah, we want to triage the thing, we want to address the one thing, but if you go down and down and down the line and you try and get them to remember all these things, like
Now,
how far back do you think they can go?
you go major, minor. You can't fix everything in one session. So what's
Yeah,
the biggest mistake? You focus on that. And after they've done a few sets mastering that, not mastering it, but being competent at
sure.
it, then you can start adding the next major flaw if they have major flaws. But it's about a hierarchy of what's going to F them up the most to all right, you're pulling with your elbows bent. Come on, let's try to work that out. That's minor. Whereas a rounded back or your bars out over your toes, those are going to be major flaws that screw everything out upstream or downstream. Yeah, downstream after the
Yeah.
initiation. Yeah, had to think for a second.
That's all right.
But in elbow pull, I would try to deal with that at the later end because world records are set with elbows bent
Sure.
in the clean. So I mean, it's
Yep.
not efficient, but by God, people can still do it. So that's
Yeah.
one of the low ends. I had, um, I don't know if he'll mind me calling him out. Josh Wells went to the Pan Ams. I mean, Pan Americans or juniors, and he pulled his entire life. He's pulled with his elbows bent.
Uh-huh.
Could not. Some people you can coach and they'll get out of it. Josh would not get out of it because he was successful, and he really didn't need to. Well, how much how much performance gain would a tiny bit of elbow bend induce?
Yeah.
There's no one's ever quantified it, so we're just theoretically um, suggesting that the straight arms because it's better for force transfer. Because when you bend
Mhm.
the elbow, it's like acts like a spring, and so when you
Yeah.
really crank on that bar at the top of the pull, your elbows tend to straighten out. But
Yeah.
some of the guys just still can deal with that.
Yep. With that said, with I went through a period of time where I was almost agnostic, like where it was like, I don't know, like maybe this is. Do you have rules like you have to follow? You know what I mean? Like if you look at sports performance, you look at the highest end, like you could probably find examples of people that are able to do things that may not make sense on paper, but do for them. Do you know what I mean? Like, because at some point or another, I was like, I don't know. Let's see what happens here. Like, maybe this does work. Maybe this, I don't know.
Well, in weightlifting specifically, being stronger is always better. And
Okay.
people tend to think that you can make up for some weakness by having better technique. Okay?
Yeah.
I have a observational argument against that. And it's a big one. It's because its name is Shane Hammond. Shane Hammond, I think, was the first human to squat 1,000 pounds. I saw him do 880 for a set of 5 with a belt, some knee sleeves, t-shirt, and gym shorts. And they weren't just
Yeah.
no, they were do 5. And it was just effortless for him.
Yeah.
I think the best he ever got internationally was 5th at the games and world championships. And I asked him one day, what is it about these guys that are beating you? I mean, you deadlifted 1,000, I think he deadlifted close to 900, did 1,000 squat and bench pressed, I don't know, 600, I don't know. But the squat part was important because that's shared between Olympic lifters and weightlifters.
Yep.
And even though they squat in different techniques. But
Uh-huh.
he flat out said, everyone that beat me is stronger than me. This is the world's strongest power lifter at the time. And the weightlifters were doing better than him. Not because of technique. He had pretty darn good technique for his recent transition. But they were just stronger. So stronger is always going to be better no matter what you think. Technique can make up for some things, but it cannot make up for everything. My technique is fairly decent for an old dude, but at the World Championships last weekend, I got smoked by Cantinoso from France because he just power cleaned that dude was fucking strong. Pardon my language.
Oh,
Strong.
okay. Yeah.
Strong and kicked my ass. So that I just got to go back to the gym and get stronger at 67 because he's in my age. He's in my age group forever. So I'm gonna have to get stronger than him.
Well, there will come a time when you will win that battle.
Yeah, in masters weightlifting, actually, there's only. I think I may be one of the longest participating masters athletes because I started my training career for weightlifting, 71, competed my first time in September of 72. So that's 53 years ago this month that I started competing.
Yeah.
Most masters lifters, as of last year, have less than six years experience in the sport.
Interesting.
And that's a function of CrossFit because
Sure.
people get confident in their abilities, they get introduced to weightlifting, and this goes for the juniors all the way up to the masters, and then they hop over to weightlifting because it's fun, and
Hmm.
they found it fun. Where did the fittest woman on earth? Where'd she come from? Weightlifting.
Yeah.
You know, and where did uh, Matty Rogers get introduced to it?
Yep.
Got introduced in CrossFit, so
Yep.
came over. So there's
Yep.
a nice flow back and forth between these two bodies, but it increased our um, recruitment pool massively. That's why we're in a renaissance of weightlifting in the United States right now, every bit as good as the 1940s and 50s, is because instead of handpicking people and supporting them like Bob Hoffman used to do, I mean, it was a big deal to be on the York Barbell team. I mean, that was a big
Yeah.
deal. Because if you made it there, you were likely going to be on American national teams and off you go. Because he
Yeah.
supported his people.
Yeah.
Um, but not many people have that opportunity to get supported as an athlete. And so there's, with 6 years of the average CrossFitter or Masters weightlifter coming over, they don't know about the history, they don't know about technique, they don't know a lot of stuff, but they damn well do really good because they're so fit. And Mike Bergner's done a pretty darn good job of developing his seminar system, and his kids are doing a really good job of delivering it and making introductory coaches. So we're seeing the results of that, of having thousands and thousands and thousands of entry level coaches out in every box. And even though they're not certified by USA Weightlifting or anybody else, they're producing good athletes, good
Yeah.
weightlifters. And then when they move over into the not proper, the historical pathway of development for weightlifters, they start getting some support.
Yeah. What change? What's the biggest like? So, what do you mean by that? Elaborate a little bit on that. The historical support. What coming from like a beginner level coach who
Um,
is now training athletes in that avenue. What does that? Tell me more about what you mean.
well, well, it's really changed based on era. In the 1970s, when I came up, when you were in the top, the ranked top juniors, when I think I was 13 when I broke into the top 10 in the flyweights in the United States. Um, and then after the 74 Junior Olympic Nationals, um, got invited to go to the national training camp. Never heard of a national training camp because I was a little kid from Mexico, Missouri, out in the middle of nowhere. I knew nothing about how
Yeah.
things worked. So after that, found out that you could go to national training camps with the national coaches if you were. They offered it to the gold medalist. Then if he didn't take it, the gold and silver medalists, and if they didn't take it, they would keep going down the line.
Mm.
But I got invited every year. I went to 3 of them, and they were a lot of fun. And you get exposed to not only the the other lifters from everywhere around the country, but also to some of the best coaches in the world at the time. In the 80s, they started, and 90s, they had the Olympic Training Center where they would invite kids out and they'd spend short term camps out at the Olympic Training Center. Then they also developed a residential program where you could, if you were good, like you're on the team for the Worlds, you're going to go to the Olympics, or you're a developmental guy that's going to, or girl that's going to be potentially there next. You
Mm.
could go and stay at the Olympic Training Center free, room, board, national coach, athletic trainers, physicians, everything you need. Okay, that was the support system. And then you got funded. You got your trips to international events were not at your expense and things like that. That went away a few years ago because the USOC basically removed USA Weightlifting from their residential program. So there's no longer a place that we can send people to get top flight support in their drive to make an Olympic medal. So
Yeah.
during that middle time when there is, that's where we lost a lot of medal potential, because the coaching staff tended to spend more time with those elite athletes trying to refine technique, so they would just overlook the strength part of it. Shane Hammond's a good example. 1,000 pound squatter, and he said he was never programmed for more than 660 300 kilos in his programming. So you got to get, so that's 60%. I mean, you're just doing
Yeah.
66%. That doesn't even drive homeostatic disruption, doesn't disrupt anything, so it won't drive adaptation. So they were letting him get weaker, but at the expense of spending more times doing reps for technique. So we had a lot of mal approaches during that intermediate period, where we dropped from the 60s, 50s, and 60s down to not getting any medals other than a few here and there. Um, Wes Barnett was one of them, got a bronze medal at Worlds with a clutch clean and jerk one year. But that was the best we'd done since for 30 years. That was
Yep.
he was the best ever. Then,
Yeah.
but now we have coaches everywhere that can support, and we have people like Tim Swords down in Houston, Bergner's Garage. There's a bunch of really, really good Olympic weightlifting coaches that have
Yeah.
really, really good operations locally that people can go to. And I can also tell you from personal experience, you can make it to the national level without ever leaving your house.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Because when I didn't have squat racks to start with, I lifted in the mobile home that we lived in, lifted inside until I dropped the barbell through the floor, and then at that point I had to go outside. 24,
Yep.
it was 365 days a year. If I trained, I was outside.
Yeah.
So it was in the wintertime, it was put the bar in the house in between sets, wearing really, really deer hide thin gloves,
Yeah.
get the bar back outside, load it back up, take the gloves off, do the lift, strip everything off, put it back in, put the gloves on.
Yeah.
Then about a minute later, take it back out. So it was
That's
hard, it was a hard thing. Nowadays,
Right.
I don't. Now I have a little bit of air conditioning in the gym and a little bit of heat,
Oh man.
so I can actually do it inside all the time. But
Yeah.
there, but
I want
there's
to.
a
I want to
there's
tie that thought. I want to go back to that thought we were exercising a little bit before about the strength versus technique, and like juxtaposing those two in terms of athletic development. For if we could talk about that in terms of a coach managing a stable of athletes, or even just in a CrossFit box, like what does that look like in terms of the balance there for the general population?
okay. On highly technical lifts, it's going to take you a little bit of time before you can load them up,
Mm-hmm.
start loading,
Mm-hmm.
start progressing.
Mm-hmm.
Things like the squat, the bench press, the deadlift. We can teach those in a day, in an afternoon, in
Yep.
just a bit.
Yep.
And
Yep.
if their range of motion, their flexibility is appropriate in the squat's the most difficult out of those, because can you get your hips down below your knees, and
Yeah.
can you hold the bar where it's supposed to go, and but you can still do those really, really quickly. Contrast that to the snatch, and that's much more difficult. It's going to take some people. I can still teach a lot of people in just one afternoon. We can spend a session, and we can at least get a decent power snatch. Done that with athletes all over the place. You can get functional, competent technique in a day if you're good at coaching. I hope I'm good, and the athlete is coachable. And there's a
Yes.
real problem, is because athletes,
Yes.
especially collegiate athletes, have huge egos. I know better than you, and so they make it hard. They just
Yeah.
go, I know better than you. So it takes a while. But a naive, especially I love coaching women because they listen. They're infinitely more coachable than men because they're
Yes.
coming from a place where they understand that they didn't have that experiences that those guys did. And so they, and also, I also love it because they can progress so fast, and it makes you so happy as a coach to see people progress
Yep.
and without a fight. So it, I love that. But you can't, also, you can't just, I see lots of weightlifting coaches and lots of people on the internet that says, you know, you have to perfect your technique before you start loading. No, the perfect is the
Right.
enemy of the good. You have to be competent before you load. Competence means mechanically efficient. There may still be minor technical errors that deviate from perfection, but there's nobody in the fitness world, medical world, clinical world, scientific world that have defined what perfect technique is, because they can't define it for every single person.
Yeah.
What's perfect? So
Yep.
when these people say, I'm going to perfect your technique, they're just blowing smoke up your ass, and they're just trying to, I don't know what they're trying to do. They're not doing anything for the benefit of the client. They say maybe it's going to reduce injury rate, but competency reduces injury rate.
Sure.
Competency. Because if you're assuming this person is incompetent until they're a master, not a master, an expert,
Yep.
then you have a huge amount of time where that person's not doing anything except technique work and no fitness improvement. So you're just killing their progress, killing their goals by ignoring the elephant in the room. Is that competent technique will is definitely enough to be safe.
Yeah, I find that a lot. I encounter that so often where people will say, "Oh, wow, I wanted to have perfect technique. I really want to focus on form," and I get the sentiment, but at the same time, like it is at a massive detriment to progress, and there is a requirement of some resistance in hitting that, the magic spot of I don't know, challenge to where it causes the adaptation and it causes you to focus on the improvement. Because if you can do it perfect all day, then what's the point?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying? Am
But
I echoing what your
you're you're
point is?
you're in the you're in the ballpark there, because when I'm just doing technique work, I'm not doing anything other than working motor coordination,
Mm.
because I'm using I'm well, do they even know how much their 1 RM is or their max is when they're doing this? Because they're not loading them. So how much weight are
Yeah,
they actually using? They don't even know what that relative stress load is on that person, because they're
sure.
using an estimation. So they have a low load, it doesn't drive any adaptation. The only adaptation that can occur is you're ingraining those motor patterns into the brain and in all your reflexes. So, but when you train for strength or power or speed, you have to overload what they have done before. If there's no overload, and I'm not talking about big overloads, I'm talking about small ones.
Yeah,
There is no
yeah,
overloads, there is no adaptational drive. So you don't go anywhere. You don't get stronger.
yeah,
You don't get better. You
yeah,
don't get more fit. That's one of the things I really liked about the CrossFit model, is that they were pushing every day. They pushed, and it was in a logical process. I love Greg's original template because it was codified in a really clever way, with 1 day strength, then the next day is endurance and gymnastics, then strength, endurance, gymnastics, all in 1 day. Day off, then you do it again, or you go down the pyramid, whatever way you wanted to do it. But it was clever and understandable for anybody who wanted to use CrossFit model of programming.
yep,
So I love that because it pushed, and it was also short term. I
yeah,
hate long, slow distance anything, because the only people that have any use for long, slow distance are people that are going to go long, slow distance. So, and even then, you see CrossFitters running marathons with never running a marathon. So, those long, slow distance things, in cycling, we just call them junk miles, and in running, they're just wasted miles. And well, people are gonna that listen to this and know me are going like, "Oh, you're just biased. You hate running." I'm going, "Yeah, long distance for me is 50 yards."
All right. That's and wait,
And
are we talking? So can you elaborate on that a little bit more? Are you talking about general fitness? Are you talking about performance? Like what? Because I would push back a little bit on that if we're talking general fitness.
in in general fitness, I mean, here you go. VO2 max, right? Everybody
Yep.
has heard it. How much oxygen your body consumes during maximal exercise.
Hmm.
Okay. Long, slow distance never puts that out um, into an adaptive requirement because you're not going supra maximal. You're going like at 60 to 70%. Maybe if you've been
Hmm.
running for a long time, you're running about 80% of VO2 max.
Hmm.
So you're never driving your VO2 max, your aerobic fitness up. What you're doing with long, slow distance is depleting energy stores so you increase the amount of carbohydrate and lipids that get stored inside the cell and in tissues that are regularly um, accessed for that energy. So it makes you able to run longer, not faster. So
So what I'd come to
intervals,
understand was that it was building a bigger base so that your like talking. It's like the hypertrophy of aerobic exercise, right? Like we're talking about building a bigger base so that our peak can get taller, like we talk about
nope.
with
It
hypertrophy, building that
well,
bigger, and so you can
nope.
no.
The your VO2 max does not go up unless you're a beginner with long slow distance. So if you're talking about a bigger energetic base, meaning I have more gas in my tank, yes, long slow distance will do that. So
Hmm.
you have more to use. Now, theoretically they could say, well, if you have more to use, you can use it at a higher rate faster.
Hmm.
But then you haven't if you haven't done any interval work, sprint work or anything like that, you don't have that innate mechanism to be able to accelerate beyond what you currently were at VO2 max previously. Doesn't make any difference. If your hose is only this big around, it doesn't make any difference how big that tank is that
Yeah.
you're trying to pump it through. It's only going to go through that at a maximal rate dictated by diameter and the strength of your pump. And if the heart hasn't been uh, stressed by maximal resistance from sprints, heavy lifting, or from um, other interval type training like CrossFit, the high intensity, then you're not increasing the strength of the heart. And some people will say, yeah, you get a bigger vascular diameter with long, slow distance, but I would defy you to go try to find that evidence of cause and effect in elite athletes.
Hmm.
You can see that in somebody that just got up off the couch and their capillaries and venules and arterioles are about this big, and then after a couple years of training, they're this big. So
Yeah.
yeah, there is an adaptation in those early times, and they're really good. But we can't use control people or untrained people and their response to exercise to describe what happens to the elite, the advanced, or even the intermediate, because they're different populations. They respond to training in a slightly different way in terms of volume intensity, basically the training programmatics.
Yeah. So if you were trying to improve somebody's VO2 max, that was the primary objective. What would program design look like for you for that person?
They'd have some nasty intervals in there. That's what we. That's where you're driving it. It's nasty intervals with big efforts, low rest. I mean, that's where you're going to go. That's where you're going to get the biggest drive. Anything that makes you, if your goal is to run a fast 10K, then and you don't do any high intensity work, like at the 400 meter, 800 meters, as fast as you freaking go, low rest. fast as you can frickin' go again, low rest, you know, do those kind of things. It's you're gonna get better, maybe, but not until you start doing these intervals. Then you're just gonna explode in your progress. And we've seen article after article in the research literature that supports this. One of my really early articles for CrossFit, I think it's 2006, 7, was a facultative anaerobe, me, takes the air out of aerobic training, or I forgot what the exact title was, but I tried to be really clever and funny. But it actually, in that it has a table that has been included in a bunch of academic textbooks and has been part of many, many, many different discussions, because I lay out what each type of interval, what kind of training that aerobic people need to do or shouldn't do. So it's a table of here's what the description is, here's the system it affects, here's why it affects it, and here's the outcomes. So that one actually is fairly useful. I really liked that article for a long time. It was fun to put together, because even the military is long slow distance, was long slow distance forever. When I was in the Army, did we do anything other than run 3 to 5 miles in morning PT? No, that's what you did. That's all you did. So the military was, well, you did push-ups too, but they were sucked. 10 push-ups. Okay, I can do 1 arm or 2. Come on. But there's in the general fitness world, I would still say that you would still preferentially use the interval type work preferentially, because the long slow distance only increases the amount of stored carbohydrate, stored lipid in the body. Doesn't do much for protein synthesis and rebuilding muscle, because it doesn't really build muscle. Look at the people that do long slow distance. What do they look like?
Yeah. No, right.
It's long distance, that repeated slam, especially if they're heel strikers, that's catabolic. That's one of the reasons that many runners have, a doping positive on runners doesn't necessarily have to be on erythropoietin or other things. It is often it's testosterone, steroids, because it helps in recovery and helps them carry bigger mileage without losing muscle mass.
Yeah.
So I'm still firmly in the trench of, it's more important to do your intervals and develop them, because those will, let's just think about this. I moved my squat from 200 pounds to 400. How many reps can I do with 200 pounds now? A lot. You're talking on the neighborhood of 30 reps or somewhere, if you believe the formulas.
Sure.
So if you do the intervals and you increase your VO2 max, that really slow long run that you're doing is an even lower percent of your VO2 max, so it's easier to do. So even if you hadn't run 10K, but you've improved your VO2 max, you're going to be able to move through that 10K faster than you would if you only did the long slow distance.
So right. So it's just not one or the other, though. If we're gonna balance it out, I guess that's If you only got time to do one thing, intervals.
Yeah, I'm about time efficiency in the gym. What is it? Malcolm, what's his name? Says 10,000 hours to expertise.
Yeah, Gladwell. Yeah,
that's bullshit too, because you can make an expert in the gym, expert technique, in a real short period of time. 10,000 hours. Just calculate that out. No, that means that most Olympic athletes aren't experts.
Yeah,
because they haven't made that 10,000. How about those people that are going, the masters that are going to world championships in 6 years? They haven't made 10,000, but they're going to world championships.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's the concept that you have to take a lot of time to train is not as hard and as fast as you would think. However, it is true because when you have an Olympic athlete, a world national level athlete, somebody that's striving to get to the national level, and they're teens, 20s, 30s, they may be spending, upwards of 10, 15 training sessions a week.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a lot of time. But you don't necessarily need that if you train smart. But
Yeah.
they still do it. And it's still required because they've got to keep pushing the edges of their ability. And that takes time to slowly and progressively and logically move your work capacity slowly up. You can't make these
Yeah.
big, massive jumps in 3 workouts. You're talking about maybe 3 years to get where you need to be.
Yeah.
But so they do need to. But after about 40, I just looked at the data on this, is that by about 40, you went from being about 10 to 15 workouts to 5 workouts a week.
Wow.
So, so when we see some of this decay of strength over the age groups, some of it is some of it is aging, not as much as we think. Most of it is the change in the way that we're structuring the training of older people. And
Can you elaborate on what that data was? Can you tell me more about what that was representative
um,
of?
well, there's lots of observational or basic questionnaire research. How many training sessions do you do? They take athletic populations. Any athletic population will fall into this. Track and field, weightlifting, judo, whatever.
Yeah.
They tend to have more training sessions. It's all in published research. You can search National Library of Medicine. You can find all those things. But there was a couple recent studies by Hubner going back to about 2018. They started collecting data on masters weightlifters, big data sets.
Yeah.
And they found that at about age 40, they dropped down to 5. By 50, it was like 4.8. By 60, it was down about 3.8 or 3.5, somewhere in there. Then by the time you get to 70, it's just barely right at 3. So you just see this steady decline of exercise sessions
This is
over time.
self-reported how many sessions you're doing based on
Yeah,
age.
yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
and it's fairly, most of us my age, we're going to tell you what we did because what does it matter? We're not trying to look cool because we suck. My strength level is down from when it was at its peak between 48 and 52, and
Yeah.
and one of the reasons it was my strength peaked at 40 to 52 is because we were working on training projects with Glenn Penley,
Yeah.
Jacob Reeves, a whole bunch of our researchers that worked with me, my graduate students at Midwestern, would come up with these ideas. I don't make any athlete or anybody do a training session or training program I had not done. So I was part of the subjects in the pilot study.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when I was in my late 40s, early 50s, I got up to 13 training sessions a day. Hated every minute of it because it hurt all the time. But I got strong lifetime bests. So if you look at where is it that we're going to be biologically drop off, you have to drop off. That's unknown because, like Jennifer Thompson, she's 50. She just set another world record in bench press a few weeks ago. It's a 132-pound woman doing I think it was 345 this time. So, and she's had those records for like 25 years, and she just
Yeah.
keeps adding some every year. And she's 50.
Yeah.
So, we're still seeing strength increases, and I experienced strength increases all the way up to 50, but then life got in the way, brain tumors and shit, all get in the way.
Yes.
Divorces, there's
Yeah.
life gets in the way of things, but you can still come back from that.
Well, that was kind of what I was initially thinking. It's like when I was 20, I could have trained all day, every day, based just because of life. Like I had classes to go to, but I could have gone in and I had the, the physiology to sustain it as well. But there's that balance. And then at 40, like that's how old I am now. I couldn't possibly. I barely can get my hour in the gym right now. It's a have to. But if I tried to squeeze in a couple other ones, I might be also divorced and not have a
Yeah,
couple businesses either.
yeah.
So.
Maybe that is why I am divorced. I don't know.
Well, you're still getting
Yeah,
stronger. So,
yeah. And one of the things that did happen a couple of years ago, my body weight was unrestricted, and I was working on bench press because I'm doing both weightlifting and bench press in old age, or weightlifting and powerlifting in old age. And when I my best bench press was at 20. Well, when I was like 18 at 114 pounds, I did 220. Then
hmm,
when I was in the army, did 245 at about 155. Then at would have been 59, I did 281. So that
jeez.
tells me that muscle strength can continue to be developed even in
Yeah.
the 50s. And what I'm trying to do now, I'm in my late 70s. I'm trying to get my deadlift and my bench press back up to where they were in my 50s and exceed that. It's hard to do weightlifting because the technique.
Sure.
Have you ever watched a master's weightlifting program or
Oh yeah.
event?
Oh yeah. Oh
You,
yeah.
you notice that once you hit 50, almost everybody power cleans or power
Yep.
snatches
Yep.
because our knees, our shoulders hurt. Just
Yeah.
they're not pathologically, it's just ache. I don't want new knees, I don't want new hips, I don't want new shoulders. They all work fine. I got great range of motion. It's just that but then I start
Yeah.
moving and they feel better. I'm one of
Yep.
the few that still uses full squat technique in the snatch and in the clean and in the my age group and up because I work on that range of motion and I also may have a decent pain tolerance, but I feel so much better when I move. I feel
Yeah.
better when I move. And
Sure.
that's what
Yeah.
a lot of people don't understand at my age. And, well, anybody above 55 that is not getting out and moving
Yeah.
is setting themselves up for debilitation. And it doesn't
True.
have to be, I'm not saying just go out and you got to get into the gym and do everything. Yeah, you can do anything. The Surgeon General's, healthy people 2020 or 2030, they want physical activity, which is just moving. That's a
Yeah.
noble. That's noble, but it's not going to give you better function overall to stay out of the nursing home.
Right.
So you need to get to the gym to stay out of a nursing home. You need to move to minimize your pain, to get rid of some of your pain.
Yeah. Love it. Well, that's probably a good thing to end on. I think that's sage advice for all populations, but especially like as you're kind of representing the canary in the coal mine, still getting stronger in your 70s. That's pretty sweet. So
Yeah.
I think we can all learn from that.
Well, not 70s. I'm 67. So
Oh, sorry. I
three years
misunderstood.
away, but I'm okay with that
You're
too.
getting there.
Yeah, I'm not an ageist. I don't have any. You can call me a geezer. You can call me an old fart. You can call me whatever you want to because I am. I
With
think
respect. Yeah.
there's only 9% of the population older than me, which tells you how what I'm seeing in my future here.
Yeah. That's great. Well, I appreciate the heck out of your time. This has been a joy, and I appreciate all that you shared with us today too. So
Not a problem. It's always fun to talk to people that share the same interests. I mean,
yeah,
it's great fun. But I
yeah.
don't do these like I told you yesterday. You're the second podcast I've done, and the first one was with Chris way back 10, 11. I don't Might have been
Wow.
2014, might have been 15.
Cool.
I don't remember which. But I don't do them because I want people to look at my work, not look at me. Because,
Yeah.
I'm a hobbit. My kids call me a dwabbit because I share the features of dwarfs and hobbits. So they've been calling me that since 2001. All of my kids, all four, they all call me hobbit or
That's okay.
dwabbit. But people look at me when they don't even recognize that I wrote things because they see this tiny little guy, you know, Gutfeld is taller than me, you know, and I'm just this tiny little guy that doesn't really look like he's strong or knows anything because I don't have either Lex Luthor, bald head or, Einstein hair. And when I was in the UK, since I'm an American, I was teaching in the UK, they all thought I should be 6 foot something and weigh about 350. So they would tell me, everybody would tell me that, oh, you don't look like an American. Okay. Really? Really? Yeah. Let me point to right over here in the gym. There's a 4 foot by 6 foot flag. No, I'm not American.
Yeah.
I got an American flag in my gym. Yeah.
Yeah.
So but I really enjoy people. Like you read my book and you told me about it. I really enjoy it when people do that. When I was at the powerlifting, there was the Masters Festival of Strength in Las Vegas was where they had the World Championships weightlifting.
Yep.
So I did that on Friday, and on Saturday they had the Desert Rampage powerlifting event. So I did powerlifting the day after. And
wow.
I rapidly learned there's two bits to this story. One is like I've done powerlifting and weightlifting separated by 2 weeks before, but never by less than 24. Holy shit. I was sore until about 3 days ago. That kicked my ass because
like
maximal event. But I also learned a little data point about myself is that that maximal weightlifting performance on Friday led to about a 10% decrease in what I was capable of on Saturday. And I was really glad that I dropped my openers by 15 kilos. On Friday. I had 2 weigh-ins on Friday. USPA weighs in on the day before. So you give them the opening attempts. I gave 15 kilos across the board less. Good decision.
Good call.
Yeah. But when we were back in the weigh-ins, a guy just came up and says, "Are you Lon of Lon Kilgore and the Strength Standards?" And I go, "Yeah, that's me." And so we got into a nice discussion. He's a strength coach. He works at a gym, and he also has other businesses as well. But he goes, there's too many people, especially kids, coming in with these big cocky ideas of how strong they are compared to everybody else. And so he just hands them a copy of the new standards and says, read this, and you'll see where you're at. And he goes, awesome. They always come back more humble.
I like that. That's great.
But I always get something like that when I'm out in events and somebody actually has read my stuff, and it was also disbelief. They don't really think that this little tiny guy out there is the guy that did it.
That's funny.
And that's fine.
Now they know. That's great. I'm glad I had the honor of being your second podcast and putting some more to the name. And I'll plug your books too at the end here.
Yeah, I keep getting emails from talent agencies that want to manage me for podcast and other, and I'm going like, no, because that's one, I don't know if it's legitimate, and two, I don't want almost everything. Most of the stuff I put out is free to everybody to consume, or price so low that I make like $1 or $2 off of a book. So I mean, I'm not here to. I'm here to inform. I guess this goes back to my professorial and coaching things. In weightlifting, I've never taken a penny for coaching, which is stupid for most people, but that's where I grew up. I grew up with during the era of volunteer coaches. I wouldn't be where I'm at if I hadn't had volunteers. But when I was an NCAA strength coach, I got paid for it. Yeah.
All right, Lon. Well, thanks again. Appreciate the heck out of this, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah. Need anything, just yell at me.
All right. Deal.
All right. Talk to you later.
All right. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to join our group at strengthcoachcollective.com.